Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, hello, folks. Today we're going to dive into looking at a tool that was recently sort of promoted by the folks over at 37 Signals. I think this is actually the team that's even developing the tool. They were looking at how to manage a containerized application that they had built. They were using Kubernetes previously. They were using cloud services, public cloud services, and were looking at how they could better manage their cloud costs. Clearly, it's a topic that's of interest to us. And what we're looking at doing is actually trying to spin up MRSK ourselves, just see how it works, see what it looks like. I've got a couple of target systems. We'll actually also probably spin up an EC2 instance, since that's, to me, the most likely way that an end user would potentially play with it. We've got some remote little Linux hardware floating around as well. So there's a number of different approaches to how we can actually go about doing this. Wanted to see what it looks like to try to spin it up. And so we'll do that today in this little CCS episode. And hope that you find it interesting and that you follow along. I will try to follow the comments in the live chat. So if you have a question, go ahead and drop it there. And if not, then leave it in the comments afterwards, and we'll try to get back to you as quickly as we can and keep the conversation going. Of course, as with all things, don't forget to like, subscribe, share this with your friends. If you find this content useful, the more engagement we get, the better off we all do, because we all A, see that there's value, and B, get to play with that. So I'll try to stick around here in the view, but more importantly, I think, is actually diving into actually working with the tool. So I've got access to an Amazon environment. That's a pretty simple thing to get set up, and we have other videos on sort of how to get yourself configured and up and running so that you can talk to Amazon. And that's not required for MRSK. MRSK just needs a target compute instance. So we'll manually spin up an EC2 instance. Maybe if we get really fancy, we'll look to put together some Terraform for that as well. And just in general, we'll work on trying to make this useful. So MRSK in and of itself is a tool. And so the first thing that we probably need to do is look at how we're going to run that tool. The deployment here, there's a screencast. This is from this GitHub project. If you search GitHub and MRSK, I think this will probably be the first thing that shows up. But there's also a simpler one, which is mrsk.dev. So this is their little intro page. Obviously, you can see that they're not spending a whole lot of time on the front end of this, but that's not the point. The point is that this is a simple tool to allow you to build out an application. And all I really want to do is see what it looks like to work with this. The alternative would be to work with something, for example, like a Kubernetes environment. And let's see, I don't think I have Docker running on here, so let me go ahead and start that. So I'll spin up a Docker on a local instance. This is a pretty beefy machine. It's got 64 gig of RAM, etc. So could certainly run this locally. And here it's spinning up a Docker environment. And with Docker Desktop, one of the things that you get is the ability to run Kubernetes locally. So we can look at a local Kubernetes instance versus a remote Kubernetes instance from the perspective of interacting with it and running an application. It's very similar. And this is one way to turn on Kubernetes, is to start Docker Desktop. The other way to do Kubernetes, of course, would be to look at something like EKS. But the funny thing is that with Amazon, you really can't just go and start EKS. You can create a cluster, but the rest of the cluster still needs to be built out. You have to attach some kind of compute installation to it. And there are a whole bunch of variants to doing that. And I'm certainly not going to try to dive too deeply into that here today. More, I wanted to touch on the technology of getting something up and running in an environment. So, if you're going to do EKS xctl, do I have this installed here? No. How about xctl? Yeah, this is the tool that you want to use if you're going to do EKS in Amazon, because it is effectively a management layer. It was built by the folks at Weaveworks and really sort of expands on the concepts behind the management of EKS. It's more than just turn it on. There's more to it, and often you're going to want something like a Nirmata or Platform 9, or there's a myriad of tools out there to help you manage. Rancher would be another one that will help you manage a Kubernetes cluster. But what we really wanted to get into was looking at MRSK or MRSK or MRSK if you're Dutch, I guess, and you're into the shipping world of resources. But anyway, so EKS is one path into it, and the other one is to sort of simplify your life and run at the sort of physical compute level. Now, I think the reason that MRSK showed up was specifically to look at how you develop and build out an environment without massive overhead. Like I said, even to get EKS up and running, we have tools that we have to leverage to sort of manage that life cycle and manage that system. So that's one service that we would want to, actually, we probably ought to make sure that we are upgrade, just in case we do actually spin up an EKS cluster. I want to make sure that everything is up to date. But what we really want to focus on is MRSK. And like I said, MRSK is a tool. So we'll want to make sure that, it's going to go and build out all that stuff. Okay, we're going to let that run in the background. MRSK is a tool, and the installation, one approach is to follow the Ruby process and to build this as a Ruby application, which is what it is, and use the gem tool, which is a Ruby package manager. So I think more commonly now people are working with things like Node, and so therefore they're using a package manager like Yarn or NPM. But in this case, we're looking at Ruby installation, so we're looking at a gem. And I actually think that the best way to run any of these tools, even here I'm installing, obviously, locally a bunch of different services to support the EKS control tool that I upgraded, which it did upgrade, so there was a newer version of it out there. It installed a bunch of local installations of resources. That's all fine. What we want to do is actually look at how can we actually go deploy our own application, our own environment, and how can we do that most effectively. Well, if I'm going to run the gem, that's one thing. Personally, I don't do it that way. I like to build out a Docker container. So I do have Docker up and running here. Yeah, Docker is running. That's good. So we can do Docker PS. And I don't have anything running. Just make sure my environment's clean. Sure. I think if I do it, images, I don't have any images installed either. So basically this is a real clean environment. What I do have though is, let's see, where am I? Yeah. I do have a MRSK environment. And so MRSK has, you can see here, there's a gem file and a lock. So there's a gem environment that is current to this build of MRSK. Actually, I guess we could do a git pull and make sure that we have, check out main. Okay, so there's been an update since the last time I even downloaded this. We want to check out our Cumulus branch. I do this, just even if you pull down a Git repository, it makes sense to go create a branch. That way you're running in your own space. If you start changing things, you're not changing. Actually, I guess we need to then do git merge main to here. Okay, so because I created a branch from the previous version, so now I've merged the main branch into my Cumulus, whatever things I might tweak. If I need to make a code commit or code change, I'd want to do it in a branch anyway, so this just keeps things a little bit cleaner. Now, there's already a Docker file here, so we don't even have to go create our own file, and this will go and install on a Ruby, Alpine-based Ruby. So Alpine's a pretty lightweight Linux base image, so you get some command line tools and things like that with it. So there's already a Ruby base that we can build off of, and this will go and make sure that that the MRSK tool is installed. We're not going to do anything beyond what they need in order to get the tool running, because we're going to run this still locally as a local container. So we can just do docker build locally, and we can call it MRSK. MRSK, that will probably be a little bit better. It helps if you do that right. So it's docker build, and then you have to tell the build context. In other words, what directory do you want to pull the stuff in from and sort of build everything from. -T is then to tag it, and we're going to tag it with MRSK. And since I didn't give it a tag identity, it's going to use latest. But actually, you know what? We'll go ahead and, we'll let it do latest. So now it's going to go through its build process. Since this is I think a recent Docker install, there's probably not a whole lot of cached content, so it's going to have to pull it all down from upstream. Bandwidth here is okay; it's not out of this world by any means, and we'll sort of see how the system behaves as we go on, and we'll let it go ahead and build. This will take a minute or so. Okay, so we now have a package called MRSK, and if we do docker run, we want to remove the image after it's done running. We probably want an interactive service, and we can say go ahead and run the MRSK image, and we should have maybe a shell, or it's going to respond with, hey, I tried to run MRSK, but I don't know what you want me to do. Now, running it like this is great, but it's still running in a container, and it's living with the container environment. So we actually do have to at least do one other thing, which is pass in a local directory. So we're going to actually do one more thing. Docker run remove. We want an interactive and terminal session, and we also want to map a volume, and you have to give it the full path as the root, and then we can just say the local directory. And then we could say MRSK again, and we should still get, oh, that's right, where do I want to put it on the inside? And I want to say, yeah, that's probably good, MRSK. Okay, so it was able to run, everything worked just fine. But what we probably also want to do is we can go ahead and do this interactively. Entry point is bin bash, for example. There's no bash, so we have to try bin shell. Okay, so so this is kind of interesting. So we've got a directory worked there, so actually we probably want to, yeah, so we're going to redo this, and we're going to run our entry point and map it to /workdir, and just for good measure, we're going to do an alias. we're going to call it MRSK, and that's going to be to go ahead and run this. And actually, we're going to make MRSK this. And we should get the same error. That's perfect, because that means that we're again running the MRSK binary within the container. And then we're going to do another alias. And I usually do it like this, MRSK shell. And then here's where we're going to put in our entry point. Entry point / bin shell. And then we can do MRSK shell, and we should get a shell. Now we have a shell, and we are in the same directory we're working in. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to create a example directory. And now if I do MRSK shell, I have nothing because I'm in the same local directory. So here's where we want to now set up a file, right? So it says, hey, go ahead and create a new file. We could call it config.deploy, and actually it looks like it wants a subdirectory called config. So we'll go ahead and do this way. And we'll go ahead and then edit this file. Now, it says here, well, let's see, I want to deploy service called hey, I want to use an image. So this is a trick. We have to find an image for an instance. And I think I have a little Flask app. So let me just check. Let's see, I think it's hub docker com u or starmer. And then demo app. This, I think this is, well, it's a Ruby Hello World. I thought I had a different one. How about demo app? Yeah, so we'll go ahead and we'll launch this. I have no clue since I didn't leave myself any notes about how to run it. We'll just assume that we're going to be able to do it. So we want a service, and we're going to call it Robert's demo, and we're going to call it, give it an image, and that's going to pull from Docker Hub. And then let's see, what server? So this is where it gets tricky. It's like, how do I actually talk to a server that's meaningful? Now I have a local instance, so this is maybe the thing that we're going to want to do. Let me get a different profile here. And let's see, we can see on my tailscale nodes. All right, so if we go here, this is my Beaver instance. Looks like I need to do some upgrades to it. The nice thing is I can get to this host from my desktop here. So we'll go ahead and say we're going to use this server, and we're going to say servers. Is that? I think there's more, and we're going to want to look at this. We're going to want to check to see, it's because I want to be able to pick a name. So somewhere here, I believe they give a lot more about the configuration, about the different resources. Okay, yeah, I'm going to want to use a different SSH server or SSH user probably. So we'll go ahead and say SSH user is rstarmer. And then what else do we have here? What else do we have in the default? If you need a secret, you could pass in a secret. We're not using any secrets for this. This is a pretty simple little app. And we're not using a special registry either. And since it's a public resource, in this case, they're talking about a private resource. That's why they're talking about these different resources, like a registry username and password. And the password you're pulling in from environment files. So you could create a .env file here, and that would help. But if we just try to run, let's just see if this works. So we have a really simple configuration. So I have a Linux host that's accessible. We can create an EC2 instance as well and do it there. But in any case, we want to be able to make sure that we can reach that host from where we're working from this command line, because it's going to try to talk to it, it's going to try to log into it, it's going to try to do some configuration and setup. And so we're just going to try this, MRSK deploy. Let's see how this works. Okay. Okay. Now we have MRSK alias, so if we do deploy, does this work? Not a Git repo. Well, it's not quite as easy as I thought it would be. You know what we can do though? Let's just see if it's just that the local Git repository doesn't map to a Git repository, because in this directory, if we look, there's no Git repository service here, and I'm in a Git repository, so I don't want to init here. It creates all kinds of weirdness. But what we can do, MRSK example. Okay, and then if we go here, so it's cd into MRSK example, and we can go ahead and do git init, the local directory, git branch -m, we'll call it main, because apparently my git doesn't have that set as default, but that's fine. Git commit minus, well, let's see, we do git add this, do status. Okay, so our there's nothing committed yet, but we can do git commit with the message of initial config commit. And then we're going to actually also do git ignore .env. Oops. All right, that's better. Commit and git ignore .env. That way, if we do want to keep secrets and we screw up and forget to not put them in our Git repository, we have a way of ignoring them. Okay, so now if we do MRSK deploy, what do we get? Does this work? Configuration for registry. So I guess we have to, actually we'll do code here. All right, so this is just, we don't need that. But what we do want to do is modify this. So apparently we need a registry parameter, registry username, Do I actually have to pass in my registry password? That would be interesting. Okay, well, we're gonna go to full screen here for a second. And while we're doing this, now I can do some things in the background. You can't see me. Ooh. So let's see. I need to go. Grab my registry password. All right, so I can go ahead and bring you guys back here now. Actually, I'm gonna put myself over here, so hopefully I'm out of the way. So we're gonna go ahead and grab the registry config here, and we're gonna add that into our code window. Okay, and then the registry username, this is your username for the registry. The default registry is Docker Hub. And we'll go ahead and use the same name for all of these things. So let's see. How about now? Oh, maybe it is just root. So actually we can just comment that out. Getting closer. Yes, so we are going to have to update our alias. So look at our alias for MRSK. And we're going to say, go ahead and copy and paste this. We have to pass in our SSH directory. $home SSH, and we want to put that into I guess it would have to be well, let's try that. No. Shell. Okay, so it's in root. Okay, so what we will do then is we'll redo this, and we're going to say, put this in root SSH. And how about now? Maybe? Ha! Success! Okay, so, and then it fails. Okay. Oh, what did it not like? Okay, so it did not like something that I tried to do with Docker. Oh, interesting. Well, that's not exactly what I was expecting. I guess we'll have a. I guess we'll just have a little bit of a look here and see if we can't. I guess what we'll want to do is build a new machine. All right, so this is where we get into switching gears just a little bit. So I think our MRSK alias is good. We'll go ahead and update the other alias as well. MRSK shell. going to go ahead and add the root path there too. So if we do want to try to SSH, we have the ability to do that from within this environment. -v $home.ssh into root. Okay. Right, so now we have those two, and actually, you know, I'm going to put these into my echo. Let's see. I'm going to put this into MRSK example. aliases.shell. I'll put MRSK shell in there as well. Good. That way we just captured them, and I put that into the MRSK repository where I can then save it as a Git Git item. All right, so we have our resources here. I think the next thing we need to do is we need to figure out how to get a default instance, just a VM running so that we can actually target it with our MRSK service. Now, the one thing I noticed is that it's trying to build a Docker environment, and I mean, that's going to blow up anyway because, I mean, I'm actually wondering, what did it complain about? It's like it can't find, no, it couldn't find the command push. So on this build of my instance, it didn't like the Docker command that it was trying to run. So we're going to go ahead and just spin up, well, we're going to spin up an instance, an EC2 instance. And there's a bunch of different ways we can do this, right? The simplest for me right now would be to just go into here, into EC2, right? Virtual servers in the cloud, and you know, go ahead and go to dashboard. And here I could just say, go build me an instance. But what I really want to do is be a little smarter about that. I really want to be able to get access to the resource, so I need to make sure that my key pairs are valid. And oh yeah, okay. So I'm going to want to make sure that I have a key pair that works. So I'm going to say keygen just yeah 25519 minus n, and it'll store it. Nine minus f. And we'll call this MRSK. And we'll go ahead and just create that. Okay, and then we can cat. Let's see, the public key is the one I need. All right, cool, grab that. And actions, import key pair. We'll go ahead and cut this. Edit here. Add new tag, project. MRSK. Okay. All right, so my new key pair is there, so that will be part of any instance that I spin up. And we can go to the EC2 dashboard. And yeah, I guess we'll just go ahead and spin up an instance. And we'll launch an instance. And we're going to call this MRSK test server. And I'm going to stick with Ubuntu just because I'm more familiar with Ubuntu, but you know, x86-64, T2 micro, sure. I mean, I just want to prove that this works. Actually, we might go slightly larger. Yeah, okay, 5 cents an hour. I think that will be fine. Key pair name, I want to use the one I just created, that guy. Network settings, SSH traffic from anywhere, allow HTTP, we'll just say HTTP. That's not good, not the right idea usually, but we're going to do that just for this particular instance. And let's just give us 16 gigabytes of disk, just to have a little bit more space. Shouldn't really need much of anything because the app that I'm talking about running on here is tiny, but just to have it. Okay, so it's initiated the launch. And so now all we really need to do is wait for it to spin up. Go ahead and grab this, and we'll add this to our config. We want this guy here. So we're going to say, well, that didn't seem to work quite right, but we'll go ahead and try with this new server that we're just spinning up. Now, part of the whole MRSK model is that it's supposed to be able to, and here we're going to want an SSH user. I believe it's that for this guy. Okay. See if it's alive. Maybe it's not up and running yet. Seems to think it's pretty happy. Yeah, so I've got that key pair. Yeah, I think maybe it's not quite, maybe not quite yet online. It says open. Oh, this should fail, but maybe it'll at least respond with. Okay, so at least it's now responding. So the CPU's up, network's up. There's no status checks yet. Strange. Okay, so it should be Ubuntu user. Okay. Well, that was a little bit more painful than I think expected, but we can work with this. So, yeah, let's see. So under SSH config, do we have a way of describing? So let's see if we search for. Okay. We might have to put this in SSH config. We're going to call this MRSK. Here's where we have to get the IP address here and copy that. User Ubuntu is I think that should be, it's not username, it's user. Okay, so config deploy, right? That's what we were looking for. Service, the image is there. We have our registry information. Our SSH user is not EC2 user. Actually, we're going to go ahead and get rid of this. I know I have a simple one. I'll find it in here somewhere. It was actually under my other. I bet it's in here. Flask demo. There we go. Yeah, okay, we'll go ahead and grab this. Get GitHub. GitHub.com. Stormer Flask demo. Okay, so now we have an app. It's got a Docker file, build spec, deploy spec, etc. We'll see what happens here. So we're going to go ahead and say, let's go back to our MRSK example. I'm going to call this MRSK. And Flask demo app. All right. So let's just review what we've done. We've got a rote EC2 instance. That's all it is. I have done nothing to it other than make sure that we can log into it. And we should be able to SSH into MRSK as a host. No, it doesn't like any of those things. Oh. Too smart for my own good. All right, that's good. And then if we do MRSK deploy, what happens? Let's see. All right. All right, so it doesn't use SSH config. Let's go back to our script here. There. All right, one more time. Now what happens? Auth failed. Yeah, I know, because you don't know how to use the right SSH key. Okay, what I'll do is can grab that, and actually now we can SSH MRSK. Add that one to the list. All right, MRSK, you're looking less and less easy. And if I don't want to be root, All right. How about now? Let's see if there's any information. MRSK. I guess the other thing we can do is okay. Well, this is the hack on a hack, right? Because we really should not be logging into this instance as root. That's the whole point. But in this case, that works. So let's see if this gets us going. Okay, so I mean, it looks like somewhere here there's the ability to basically push for, you know, changing the commands that are run, because the apt-get update and apt-get install should be runnable via sudo, and then the question is, how do you pass a password into that? And there is a gem to support that, it looks like, and that's probably the right way to go about doing this, but at least in the short term, this is an approach that might get us going somewhere. And it still blows up. So I think what I'm going to have to say at this point is that interesting idea, but clearly, you know, this command, if this doesn't work, I mean, I'm not really quite sure what to do here. Build and push an app image. Yeah, that's great. So I've logged into an instance. And I logged into Docker Hub, so that did the right thing. Let's try to run this on the local host. File dot okay, so let's go back to here. EC2 instance is doing what it needs to do. I'm not using Bitwarden. Registry works. Login works. That's broken, but that's okay. Don't think we need that. Don't need container options that I'm aware of. Now let's add this config. Since they're both AMD64, oh wait, that's not gonna work. No, it does not like the Docker config. Well, I mean, that's the correct command. How do you do just for a single platform? What if you don't want to build an ARM one? Ah. All right, so maybe this is the right trick. So okay, let's not do that right now. I mean, you would think this would be easier. this is really bizarre. I'm not quite sure what to say. I thought this was going to be a pretty straightforward little operation, and it is clearly not. I guess what I can say from this is that, yeah, MRSK is clearly not ready for prime time. The demo looked good, though, but it's classic for demos, right? Oh, it looks great. Works great. Or, in this case, doesn't work at all unless you're in their very specific environment. So, I mean, local and remote builder processes, I guess we could try this, but I don't imagine that this is, we can just say, okay, well, what if this is the local config? And we're going to say MD64. I'm going to say let's go ahead and get rid of that. How about now? Line 16, column 61, so that's this. So I couldn't read the config. That's fine. Okay, let's try this again. It's running in a container. So this is where this breaks down. I guess I need to map in var run. Whew. All right. Well, let's give it a shot. So we'll update our alias again, because I apparently need to be able to talk to not only SSH, but also the var run directory. Let's see what happens here. Yeah, so it's trying to run Docker locally. Maybe what we can do instead. Okay, so this problem is actually not, it's not because of the config, but we're going to try this anyway. We're going to say rstarmer at all right. How about now? Can you do your local build by SSHing to the... No, why are you trying to do that? I want you to build locally, but with... Oh, that's where the confusion's coming from. Maybe. So let's see if there's not another way to do exposing Docker from no. Yeah, all right, so it looks like the solution is to do this in a gem. I don't know if that's necessarily a solution that I find acceptable. In other words, the system isn't set up because it wants to actually do a local build. And there doesn't seem to be a way to say, don't build locally. I mean, can I disable the builder? Can I just say, no, I got the build process? See, I don't think that fits their model, right? So the MRSK model is you're going to have it build and then push. Basically, they're following like a Heroku-like style. Builder secrets, traffic, args. Yeah, they're live in production with a very specific build. Anything else? Yeah, I'm just going to have to say this is not a tool that I would suggest using at this point. There are too many rough edges. But it was an interesting experiment nonetheless. So just trying to get through this and figure out what the state of MRSK is as a deployable app, and sort of working through that process in and of its own self is interesting, but works for them, but not for me. And that's definitely not the container ethos or the container model. And I'm actually really surprised that they didn't make MRSK run within a container to get it started. You have to run this locally on your machine to make some of the pieces work without jumping through hoops. I might re-engage on this in the future and see how they're doing, but at this point I'm going to just say this is not worth anybody's time. If you did actually see this, or if you follow along later, would love to get your feedback, would love to hear what you think about it. Clearly there's some work that needs to be done here. Interesting tool, interesting concept. I think just not yet implemented beyond a very specific organization's use case, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Just not something I would recommend spending a whole lot of time with until they get it a little bit more sorted. Anyway, it's been Robert Starmer with Cumulus Technologies. Go follow us on our normal Cumulus Technologies channel. Like, subscribe, give us a thumbs up. We're here on the Cloud Computing Simplified channel, where we try to figure out how can we make this easier. And this was a tool I thought would make things easier. I have to say, it really doesn't. And I think if you followed along, you sort of saw some of the glitches and the interactions that just makes sense in some very specifically built model, but not in a generic use case. Do come check out our Cumulus Tech podcast as well. If you haven't, Lou Tucker and I go through all kinds of topics in the cloud computing space, and the problems that we're seeing, the things that you should be thinking about as you're trying to make cloud computing a core part of your resource in your business. Certainly like, subscribe, share to all your friends, especially if you like this kind of content. Let us know, and we'll certainly try to dive into more topics. Look forward to hearing from you and chatting